into this new green screen forecast. Your host, Alvin Kamau. St. Louis has been through a lot this weekend and over the last couple of days. Of course, on May 16th, where a strong EF3 tornado went through very populated areas just north of downtown proper and just north of the Gateway Arch. It's been a very sad and devastating weekend, a day that a lot of us are going to remember, and I am so sad about it as well. We're going to recap this, and of course, we're going to talk about if we're done yet, which I want to tell you that we're done, but I'll also talk to you about an additional chance of storms. Nothing like what we just went through, I promise. The Mother Nature is giving us so much this spring, and it feels so relentless, but I'm telling you, we're going to get through this, and I'm recapping specifically that storm that caused that damage over St. Louis, and of course, that EF3 tornado that caused so much damage, something that I don't even want to look at again, but we're going to do it right now. This storm started off as a hail core over St. Charles and St. Louis County on the 16th, so that's your huge hail core. That hail core was responsible for producing golf ball, tennis ball size hail, and this storm grew even bigger with that hail as it approached the St. Louis metro, and eventually we started seeing early signs of a tornado starting to develop. This would be the one that causes that EF3 damage just on the northern side of downtown St. Louis. And let me tell you, the drive home from school was not fun because I was pelted with that tennis ball size hail, but I'm just thanking God that I was not in the path of that tornado, because if it was just a few miles to the north, I don't know what would have happened. And I'm just thanking God for his grace, and I'm praying for all of you guys that were dealing with this, because notice what became a hail core over the northern part of St. Louis became this tornadic situation, which eventually became an EF3 tornado very quickly as it strengthened. Just going on the northern side of St. Louis, the Gateway Arch is just down there. And notice, I don't even want to look at this next radar image, but this is where you've heard all the stories of people that have lost their homes. This is where it happens. From Clayton to University City, just look at that hook. Something that you thought you would never see in the St. Louis area. It just got very close to downtown St. Louis. Let me show you the images of it. Here's the Gateway Arch, and that's, oh my gosh, the edge of the tornado that I got from EarthCam St. Louis. And I just remembered that this thing did exist when we got that circulation very close to downtown. I wanted to look at EarthCam to see if I could see it, and this is the screenshot that I found of what could have been a rear flank downdraft, which is wind rushing from the storm, which could be 70 to 90 mile per hour winds that could have caused damage to people's homes aside from the EF3 tornado. But this also could have been what the National Weather Service said was a mile wide in width. To put it in perspective, a mile wide tornado in width that went through the northern side of St. Louis. And let me show you this image. I'll step out of the camera because I've looked at this 1,000 times. That's the tornado. Something you see in Kansas and Oklahoma, you never thought that you would see it in the St. Louis area. A wedge monster going through the northern side of St. Louis. It's been devastating. I'm praying for you guys, and I know a lot of us are praying for you as well. Never thought that I'd have to talk about it, but let me explain something. If you thought a tornado cannot go through the city of St. Louis, that's a myth. Even for major cities. Let me give you an example. Nashville, Tennessee on March 3rd, 2020 dealt with an EF4 tornado that went through the northern side of downtown Nashville. And also Cookeville, Tennessee. This was at night. People were sleeping. So that was a little bit stronger than this. But our National Weather Service is still surveying damage. I'll bring you an update if they do have any other information that they do need to bring us. They've been working so hard this spring. And let me tell you, they also communicated with our Storm Prediction Center down in Norman, Oklahoma to get a tornado watch way before these storms moved in, to give people that heads up. That tornado watch was put out at 10-11 a.m. for storms that would move in at 2 to 3 o'clock across the St. Louis metro. And there it was. It moved so quickly. The moment I got home after being pelted by that hail, I saw blue skies coming in from the west. It was just so surreal, out of a movie film. I never thought we would deal with that, but absolute devastation over the St. Louis area. I'm just thanking God that there were no more fatalities on top of what we just got. You can see what we saw was that debris ball that just went on the northern side of downtown St. Louis. And again, it's just very hard to look at. Here's another image of that tornado. If you know your map and where the Gateway Arch is and where St. Louis is, that's where that EF3 tornado was. And what I find a miracle is that that tornado eventually made a northeastern curve, eventually making damage in Granite City and Edwardsville, Illinois. We also got reports that there was damage to the St. Louis Zoo, but I do think that was because of damaging winds. Aside from that tornado, but again, a very scary day. There was also lots of reports that people weren't hearing tornado sirens, but I want you guys to know that tornado sirens are meant for those that are outside. You want to always have multiple ways to receive warnings. And here's another image of that track, the EF3 tornado. Our National Weather Service says before it went due east, it actually made that northeastern turn. Eventually, I think it got damage to Granite City and even Edwardsville, Illinois, which our National Weather Service is getting a new graphic ready for that. So you can follow them on their socials as they finalize what could have been a very strong tornado that went through the northern side of St. Louis. I'm not saying it went through downtown proper, but just on the northern side of downtown St. Louis. Reminds me of that Nashville, Tennessee tornado back in 2020 when people were sleeping. This was definitely a day we will not forget, and I thought March 14th was it, but you can see we've added more days to the list, and we're hoping that we can just end it there. And if there's any other day than March 14th and May 16th that can't tell people that you have to have multiple ways to receive warnings, I'll tell you right now, you gotta have a NOAA weather radio, folks. Please, at all times during this year, even during the winter, I think this was a learning lesson for St. Louis, that you want to have multiple ways to receive warnings at all times. Having a NOAA weather radio, replacing the batteries on them. Other resources are your phone. But remember, having multiple ways to receive warnings other than relying on those sirens to go off will save your life. I know there were a lot of reports again of the sirens not going off, but remember, that is for people that are outside. You know, when you have a rain-wrapped tornado, a mile wide in width, it's wrapped in rain. You gotta note that you have the heavy rain moving in, the winds, you can't hear the sirens. So that is the reason why you want to always have multiple ways to receive warnings. I promise you, over Kansas, Oklahoma, and even a place like Kentucky, this would have been very useful because we had even more fatalities in the state of Kentucky. Even one city of London, Kentucky, that got hit really hard by a tornado. I've looked at the damage and it looks even worse than what we got here in St. Louis. So prayers even out to London, Kentucky, an area in eastern Kentucky that doesn't normally see tornadoes. So May 16th through the 17th was definitely a significant tornado outbreak. And I don't like using those words, but I've used them with a lot of confidence that this was a tornado outbreak that we dealt with across the country, not just here in the St. Louis area. So if there's any other day I can tell you this, please get yourself a NOAA weather radio. They're lifesavers. At this point, don't even worry about the price. They're not that expensive. They're going to save your life. Even on a day where severe weather is not anticipated, you have a marginal risk, and for some reason you get severe weather, this thing is going to save your life. You can even take it to, if you're a teacher, you can take it with you to school. It's going to give you that heads up and that warning you need, especially if you have a dead cell phone. And as we head towards Monday, to answer your question on what's next and if we're done with severe weather, this is not going to be a repeat of what we just dealt with, but Monday we could have some more showers, maybe a few thunderstorms. You can see an enhanced risk out in western Missouri. St. Louis is under a slight risk, and if you're watching us in Illinois, you're under a marginal risk. And the anticipation is as storms move through, they're going to weaken as they move towards the St. Louis area, as our ingredients may not come together like Friday, which is something great to report. However, it's still something we got to be weather aware of. Monday morning, can't rule out some storms producing some small hail, but just your garden variety showers and thunderstorms. We get a break. A warm front's going to move in later on Monday. This would be the next day, tomorrow. And then later on in the evening, late Monday, and possibly into the pre-dawn hours of Tuesday, we'll keep an eye on some more storms to move in. I know that might sound scary, but this isn't meant to scare you. I'm not expecting this to be a repeat of what we just dealt with, which is something great to report, especially if, as we head towards late Monday, we have rain that develops ahead of any storms out to the west. That could actually weaken those storms completely before they get towards our area. So fingers crossed that happens. You can see my fingers are crossed, and let's hope that does happen. St. Louis, we're going to get through this. We're praying for you. I'm praying for you. Everyone's praying for you. Those that were dealing with those storms. And again, you want to follow me over on X. I'm going to tell you right now, before these storms moved in, I brought an update on Thursday on X, and it happened so quickly. I couldn't bring an update on YouTube. People were at school. It was just a hectic afternoon. I definitely want to have multiple ways to get those warnings and that information, which will be me and so many other amazing weather enthusiasts on social media. Whether we're talking about severe weather or even other things like tornadoes, you want to make sure you're following me not only there but on Instagram and Threads. I'll be there to bring you those updates. But until then, St. Louis, I hope you have a fantastic start to your week. I know it's going to be a wet one, but we're going to clean up this no matter if it's raining or if it's cloudy. We're going to get through this. We're going to rebuild St. Louis, the northern part of St. Louis, and make sure we don't have a repeat of this, especially with the number of fatalities that we had. But until then, stay safe, St. Louis. Follow me over on X. I'll see you there for an outdoor weather report that I'm hoping to bring some better news to everyone. But until then, stay safe, St. Louis.